From WDWNT, the worldwide leader in Disney Parks news, this is ParksCenter. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to tonight's edition of ParksCenter. My name's Ben, and joining me we have Allison.
Good evening, everyone.
Jill.
Hello.
Rob.
What's up, guys?
And Pete.
Sivako, and happy Wednesday, everyone. That's 3 shows in a row. No one was muted. This is...
We did it!
3 shows in a row.
And it's show 101. If we're ever going to have a show where things break, it should be this one. Like, yeah.
Oh, man. We are on fire and fuego.
Now I've jinxed the whole show. Oh, boy. All right, well, let's try and kick things off successfully. Shanghai Disney kicked things off successfully, being the first Disney park to reopen since the COVID closures. Things went quite smoothly from reports that I've seen and heard about this. It was a little bit strange with some of the character interactions. Not that was particularly problematic. It was just, I suppose, a little... unusual to not be able to get your picture taken with them, like standing next to you, being able to hug your favorites and things like that. But seeing them wave is still something, at least. Of note, the face characters, I believe it is the Green Army men in that shot, are actually face characters. And a lot of the Marvel characters are not wearing masks in order to keep story integrity, according to Disney. I don't know how I feel about that specifically. I think that it wouldn't have been that bad, especially if they gave them some cool themed masks that like you could get in like the gift shop. But
they put the Winter Soldier. They put the Winter Soldier out there just like he is, and you're good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Ben, can you go back to that picture though?
Sure. Which one?
The one before it. Sorry.
This one?
This woman right here is the most famous person that no one will ever know. Because this picture has been all over the place, and yet she's got a mask on, so you can't really see who she is, right? But, I mean, we've used it a ton. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like a change that's going to happen. People wearing masks in the park. And so the first time I saw the opening video that they did for, hey, we're getting ready for opening at Shanghai Disney, and they showed all the people making up the beds and cooking and all that, and they were all wearing masks. It honestly didn't seem as, like, weird and off-putting as I thought it would be. And that just may be because I'm jonesing so hard to get back into a Disney park. I don't know. But I do think that's going to be one of the big changes when all of these parks open back up, which hopefully this is the model to show everybody it can be done without the world coming to an end.
Yeah. Like that's definitely... Yeah, go ahead.
I think I like that the face characters aren't wearing masks as long as they are staying so far away or like not accessible to the general public, because it just gives you more of that sense of normalcy when you enter the park. But I do kind of think it would be cool for the Green Army men to wear them for whatever reason. It just seems like it would fit.
If anybody would, it would. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard to imagine Cinderella walking around with like a face mask on, and when you come into the park and you're trying to escape it to some degree, like, and don't really want to see princesses wearing it. And if they're up there, I don't see that much of an issue with it. Maybe have them stand even a little bit further from each other if they're not wearing masks.
Yeah,
that's what
I was thinking that. Yeah,
yeah. But I'm glad that people can't get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only beef I had, was that they were standing pretty close to one another. But I get you want as many characters up there as possible, and who knows what or how stringent they were on cast members who worked there, like what their health rating was. Are they green? Were they temperature scanned? And I'm sure they all were. But I'm totally on board with Allison. She said what I was going to say is that I didn't want princesses in face masks, and I get it, but it does take away from story completely. They're not. This is going to sound crazy, but they're not real people, so not real people should not have to deal with real world problems.
No, that makes sense.
So I have no problem with a princess being 12 feet away from me. And 6 feet away from another princess, but she should look like a princess. The Green Army Man, I think, would be hysterical, and you might not even notice it if they painted their mask the same colors they paint their faces anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me would be funny and a gag. And it's not like you have a personal relationship with the Green Army Men like you do with a Cinderella or an Aurora or someone like that. But besides the whole face mask thing, I think this is a great example of that it can be done. I'm happy it happened. It looks like the things they implemented worked out. No one's complained. Like, we've heard only good things. There hasn't been a lot of blowback so far, and we're a few days in. So I think this is very encouraging. And again, it's more of a social norm there to wear a face mask. We'll see what happens here once it comes to the States. But, hey, it can happen. This is like a glimmer of hope. This is great.
Yeah.
It's funny to talk about, like, sort of, on the one hand, Rob's talking about going and maybe it won't be so bad to see everybody in face masks, and then Pete talking about the idea that, you know, these characters are not real people. And it's going to be, this I think is probably part of why I'm like really fixated on the idea of trying to get to Walt Disney World as soon as they open. Because on the one hand, like, we're all, I think some of it is like, yes, you want to be able to go back to Disney so badly that you don't care about having to wear a mask. But I also think some of it is we're so used to seeing it in our day-to-day lives now. At least I am. Like, here in Pennsylvania,
Exactly.
like, you don't go out without seeing people. I think it's funny when, like, if I'm driving down the street and I see people in other cars wearing them, I'm like, you know, you don't have to wear it inside your own vehicle, right? But, like, everybody has them on constantly. Like, somebody walking down the street in front of my house has a mask on. But then Pete's got a really good point talking about this whole idea that the whole point of Disney is to be this fantasy bubble that the real world does not invade into. And this is like, we can't keep this out. So, you know, what's the balance between being able to maintain that fantasy kind of, this is its own separate bubble away from the real world versus you need to deal with all of these protections. And I'm not saying any of this is good or bad. I just think it's going to be really interesting to see and experience. And I think this is part of why I'm so interested to be able to get there. Like, I want to go see what this is like and how it feels.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, we're going to save a little bit of time then, and we're going to move on into Disney Springs discussion. So we have found out that, we found out a little bit ago, actually, that Disney Springs is going to be reopening on May 20th in Walt Disney World. But we do know now a decent bit more about what specifically is going to be opening on May 20th. And we also know about May 27th. Not the 24th, as another article said. On May 27th, we're going to be getting all of the Disney-owned locations back open, including World of Disney. But for the 20th, we are getting Wolfgang Puck, Haagen-Dazs, STK, Wine Bar George, the Yisaki Kiosk, not the full restaurant, I believe, Aaron McKenna's Bakery, the Four Rivers Cantina Barbacoa Truck, the Polite Pig, Joffrey's, and both of the Sunshine Churro Carts. So that is quite a decent list, honestly. I think that, like, they did a good job at getting enough names on this list that it's worth it to go back to Springs.
Listen,
Peter,
this is the
are you going to
perfect
hit up every single one of these?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
No, I was going to say, this is the perfect amount, whether they did it on purpose or not. It kind of works out because, one, a lot of these locations are spaced out from each other. So you won't have, like, two places that are right next door to each other or right across the way from each other. Most of them are pretty spaced out. And it's not too much. This is a very, very small sample size of all the stores and shops that are there. So this could be a nice little ease in, see what happens, see how people react, how they interact with each other, how they interact with cast members, how they keep their face mask on, they take it off to eat, do they remember to put it back on as they're walking around?
Yeah.
This will be a nice little experiment. So I'm okay with this. I didn't want a ton of restaurants opening up all at once. I don't want a frenzy. I think we'll see more of a vlogger frenzy than anything on the 20th. But that's really going to be it. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be that bad. It's a great idea, and like I said, I think Disney's doing it very smart. Open it up, wait a week. Now our Disney stores will open up, and then go from there. And then, just like I said, it worked out perfect. Right after the show, we talked about this last time. They announced it, and I was like, ugh. But yeah, this is going to be great. I will be there, of course, opening day. And I have reservations at Wine Bar George for 2 days later because that was the first day that was available. So I guess people are making reservations. But again, they can only take them at 25% capacity. So that's a good thing that they're kind of sold out. They're not going to overbook and then tell people, hey, you have to wait or stand outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a really good variety of stuff. So they have like you have the kiosks and you have the food truck where like that stuff is all outdoors anyway. But they have like sit down locations, but like STK and Bar George, there's a lot of space inside those places anyway. These are not like small, like intimate, like places with tables on top of each other, or just like it's really also very easy to clean the surfaces in these places. So it's like really easy to disinfect like the tables at Wine Bar George before the next party comes and sits down. And of course, they're not going to have people like, tables right next to each other anyway. But they're just, I think it's a really good place to institute precautions and then see how things go as we move into like hopefully phase 2 of it a few days later.
Yeah, that's what I'm most interested is World of Disney opening, because to me, like World of Disney is the closest thing you can get to the parks, which so many people are 100% jonesing for. That, that first day that people can get back to World of Disney, what's it going to look like? And I'm sure there are going to be, limited capacity in the store. They're only going to allow so many people in at once, but then you're going to have this line like stretching throughout Springs because there isn't that much space. Yeah, that's like a typical day when everybody who wants to can go in World of Disney. So what's it going to be like when there's a huge line that has to be 6 feet apart? Which makes me curious, are they going to like make lines on the concrete outside the store to like enforce social distancing when people
they've
are
done that. They've done that
store?
at local supermarkets, and I was going to say I think people are I shouldn't say used to, but okay with lines at this point. Here at the Publix, I mean, luckily we haven't seen it, but there are markers every 6 feet apart. I know other friends who've gone to Trader Joe's to the same thing, and Costco, where there's a line out around the building just to go in and shop. So I don't think it'd be that big of a deal at World of Disney.
There are places too that have like basically a time limit. So you can only be in the store for half an hour or whatever before like you have to leave so that somebody else can come in.
How could Disney enforce that?
I don't think they can enforce a time limit, but they can enforce a number of people, like one person in, one person out. One person in, one person out.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't think Disney's going to force people to shop faster at World of Disney. Take your time, browse, buy more things.
I don't know about that. I think Disney's got an excuse to push people to checkout pretty quickly. Like, that sounds like a dream for Disney.
Right. Plus it's like,
but those checkout lines have to be 6 feet apart, too.
That too?
Sorry.
Well, and that's what's going to be interesting is where are all these lines going to go? I completely agree. People are used to being in lines. They're tolerant of it. But when there are so many people waiting to get in the store, when there is limited physical space to have all of these lines at the registers, out the doors, where are all these people going to go? And I think this is probably only going to be an issue for the first several days, is like, because I just think people are going to descend on World of Disney en masse, like that first day that it's open, because they're just going to be so excited to be able to do anything Disney.
Are they going to have?
Side with that
you think it's going to be worse than the actual opening day?
What?
Of the parks?
What do you think will be busier?
Oh, no.
The 27th or the 20th? Because Springs opens the 20th, but then World of Disney opens the 27th.
No, I 100% think the World of Disney opening is going to be worse than the May 20th opening, because the May 20th opening is just restaurants. Either you're going there to eat or you're not. But
you have a reservation.
I mean, I think some people are going to go to walk around, but I don't think. I think it's the Disney aspect that people want to go to Springs for more than anything else.
So it's going to be Black Wednesday.
Think of this as a parent of a young child, because a lot of the people going to Disney Springs, so my daughter's a toddler now, but I think between the ages of 1 and 5 or 6, like hygiene, even in these times where kids are starting to understand it, it's like not exactly right, and they don't really follow proper precautions. And I'm just thinking about like, okay, I can bring her to a restaurant, right, where they're following precautions, but I can't imagine bringing her to a place like World of Disney, because there's not a high chair where I could constrain her, and she would just be grabbing all the items and putting everything in her mouth, and it was just like a total disaster.
I was going to say real quick, the refurbishment that they just did of World of Disney really actually works for this because they streamlined a lot of stuff in that store, made a lot less of the permanent displays, more pathways. So I think they could pare down some of the displays they have now, make more space in there, and just kind of put out the essentials that people are going to want, like the T-shirts and the wishables and things like that. So I think, unfortunately, I think that stripping it down like they did before, and they've done that with a lot of the other shops in the parks, actually is conducive to this.
Yeah.
Thanks for sanitizing your design.
Yeah, thank you. Didn't even know you were doing it, and you ended up playing a very good long game. Speaking of U.S. parks, though, Bob Chapek went on, I believe it was CNBC earlier this past week to talk about the reopening of the parks and also a bit about movies. But the big highlight that I love from this is at one point, I believe the quote's in here, that if guests continue to behave in the way they have, we may be able to approach that being opening. We're all playing our part in this ecosystem of safety, if you will, and we're going to do our part, and we need our guests to do their part too. Like that is an incredibly good point from a robot that does not understand how human viruses work, but doing a wonderful job of approximating it. Yeah.
So that quote is specifically him talking about whether they can operate at full capacity. That's what he's talking about, is that he thinks if people continue to act the way they've been acting, I think we can do that. And I'm like, when's the last time you were in the parks and saw how people behave? Because it is not socially distant. It is not necessarily conducive to politeness or respect for the personal space of people around you. So I think it's kind of funny that he thinks that people behave really well when they're in the parks and will be respectful of one another.
He just needs to go to a showing of Happily Ever After to find out how people react in the parks. Pushing, and shoving, and oh my gosh, trying to get in and out of there. That's the nightmare scenario that I think of when I think of like too many people in the parks for this kind of thing is Happily Ever After, because it is just a free for all. All rules are out the door for Happily Ever After.
Yeah, I am. No, go ahead.
Sorry. Can we just also talk about just like his tone and his word choice in this? Like, if people behave, then we'll be okay. Like, I don't know. I work in a field where occasionally I have to speak with the press, and we have a communications department where they like come and help prep me and make sure that like message is being presented in an appropriate way. And this is Disney, and I imagine that their communications team is more robust than mine. So it's so hard for me to imagine that like the CEO of the Disney company is not prepared to speak to a news outlet and like talks about its guests, which are, customers, in like this way. It's like really off-putting and, might I say, robotic.
Oh gosh. See, my point here is that I actually really appreciate the way that he said this. Because I think that maybe I've been spending too much time on Facebook, but I see so many people taking this stance of no company's going to tell me I have to wear a mask. I'm going to go in there and just wear my mask on my elbow and say, what? I'm wearing a mask. What do you want me to do? And just nonsense like that. And I feel like this is a pretty solid, like, subtle clapback at those folks that if you're not going to behave, then we're not going to open.
Right.
That's
like
good.
You're
I like
ruin
it.
it for everybody.
Leadership. You're right. I'm going to look at it that way. I like that.
I think it's funny. So somebody in chat earlier talked about like, I'm waiting to see the first fist fight that breaks out from somebody not wearing a mask at Springs.
Yeah.
And more so when you get to the parks, I think, people are going to, I think, people at the parks are going to be more likely to be there with their children and their families and be very protective of that, as opposed to Springs, right? And initially, I think will be more residents who are maybe a little bit more used to kind of operating around each other. But it's funny. I was also listening to the news tonight, and they were talking about the airline industry and what's it going to take for people to be confident again to fly. And they had on, I think, the CEO of JetBlue, and he was talking about, they said JetBlue is requiring every passenger to wear a mask. And the interviewer asked, well, what happens, if somebody tries to board the plane without a mask? And he was like, oh, well, we won't let them on the plane. And then the interviewer said, what if a person gets on the plane with a mask and then decides they want to take it off on the plane while the plane is already in flight, because you can't kick them out? Yeah. And the CEO said, we'll ask them to put it back on, but if they refuse, we will forbid them from flying JetBlue ever again. And I'm like, that's great and all, but like, that doesn't solve the problem you have immediately. And, that's kind of my question about what's Disney going to do? Like, if masks are required, what are they going to do if somebody gets in the park and then is like, I'm taking my mask off and I'm not letting you, like, short of forcibly removing the guest, which, we've seen what happened in Disneyland when a fight broke out and how that was handled very like, ooh, I don't know. And like, put on top of that, people not wanting to be in physical contact with one another because of coronavirus. Like, how is Disney going to handle it if people come into the park? And I kind of feel like that's a lot more likely to happen in Walt Disney World, because America, than it is in China. Yeah. So this stuff is going to happen, and I'll be really interested to see.
Pete, what are you?
I don't think that mask fits CDC guidelines of coverage.
Pete, I think you're muted. Oh no! It's not. You're not muted. There's some issue. There's an audio issue with you. Try refreshing. See, I jinxed it. I said this was 101, and it's the one where we're gonna have stuff go wrong, and then stuff went wrong.
Oh,
hey, he's back. All right.
Sweet sassy Molassy. Listen, I'm gonna take a different stance. Besides the angry American stance, Disney has rules, and you guys may know this. They have changed rules, and people can be upset. They have changed the smoking rules, and most people adhere to them. They smoke outside before they go in. They try their best. You do see some people hiding in corners. I'm very sensitive to it, so I can tell right away if someone's smoking. I'm like, oh, that guy's hiding in the corner with a cigarette right now. They just changed cooler rules. They just changed stroller rules. There's going to be signs up. I'm sure as soon as you enter the park, you must be wearing a mask at all times unless you are sitting down to eat or something like that. They can enforce those rules. If someone tried to get into the park with a bigger stroller, and again, I know this is something where they could wear a mask and then take it off inside, but it's the same thing with smoking. If they catch someone who's smoking, they're gonna warn that person or say, we're going to ask you to leave the park, or there's going to be some kind of disciplinary action for that person. And I feel like this is the same thing. When they got rid of smoking areas, people smoked in the parks. That situation was handled. This is going to be the same thing. I'm sure Disney security is going to be prepped with the protocol of if someone is not wearing a mask, how to approach them, or if they refuse to wear a mask, how to approach them. And something will happen. But I don't think we have to worry about this too much. And here in Florida, if you go to almost any place outside of Disney, more than half the people already are not wearing face masks. I've been to the supermarket, 70% are not wearing face masks. I've been to restaurants. Today we had a food truck gathering at my apartment complex. There were 2 out of, I want to say, 50 people only wearing face masks.
Wow. So here, like, they don't let people in stores if you're not wearing a mask. Like, they will refuse to allow you entrance into the store to begin with if you do not have a
Same here.
So
a state full of Florida men strike again.
Will probably be the most of this crowd. They're going to have to adhere. I don't know. I think that people will do what they're supposed to do because they're just going to feel honored and privileged to be back at Disney. And hey, you want us to wear a face mask and walk on our hands? We'll do it. We just want to be here. I think the more problem people would be more of the, we paid $12,000 for this vacation. We planned it 3 years ago. I'm not wearing a face mask. Yep. Most of your people coming back to the parks are going to be locals, and they're going to want to be there. So they're going to follow the rules. That is just my crazy hot take.
I sure hope you're right. Like, I don't think you're wrong, but I sure hope you're right.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I think the issues are going to be more guest to guest than they are guest to Disney.
For sure. And 7 years ago, no, that is. I'm already planning on. You know what the best part about this is?
Not
I'm
my
no
whole
longer going to be clipped by ECVs. They have to stay 6 feet behind me. I will no longer have bloody Achilles heels at the end of my day.
The best thing to come out of this. Moving back overseas for a little bit, though, just to touch a bit on Paris and Japan. It looks like Paris might be shooting for a mid-July reopening at this point. We don't know for sure. There's been no official statements, but we have seen executives kind of touring the park and what looks like previewing what some of their safety and security procedures are going to be. So that is something that would make sense for them to announce that in the coming days or so, because that would give cast about a month head start before a mid-June opening. I'm sorry, mid-June. That would give them a 2-month head start on a mid-July reopening. I'm good at numbers today. Meanwhile, Tokyo has much simpler numbers. They're just closed until further notice. As far as we can tell, there isn't a particular goal that they're shooting for there. Although, for all we know, the Oriental Land Company might be trying to shoot for an opening date that is a lot sooner than we think, but is just taking the safe, I'm not going to predict anything kind of stance so that they can open as soon as they feel that they're ready and not have any sort of external pressures or anything like that.
Yeah, Hong Kong kind of did that. They just sort of kept things on the down low, and then all of a sudden it was like, we're going to reopen soon.
It's a week. Good luck.
Yeah.
Well, with the parks here, they were saying that the July 1st reservation date was not a guarantee that we were going to open then. So I feel like they're doing their fair share of backpedaling on that, or maybe making a cushion as well. But it would be a shame to see, I feel like as this has kind of traveled towards Europe, that we would not get to open before they would. And maybe that's just me, this little jealousy thing of I'd like our parks to open first. But it feels like we should be open mid-June to end of July, especially with the Disney properties at Disney Springs opening on the 27th. So it would be great if that was the date for Paris, but for Tokyo, it feels like they should probably open a little sooner because they close sooner. I know it doesn't work that way because each country has their own problems, but I guess just it feels like they handled the situation pretty well in Japan as far as we know, and so it feels like they should be able to open that one fairly soon. And you may be right; they may just be kind of hedging their bets and not letting the word out too soon.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, and this illustrates an issue that is happening around the world from country to country, and here in the U.S. from state to state. The article about Paris talks about the fact that Europa Park in Germany is opening May 29th, which is 2 weeks from now, and so they're Disneyland Paris's biggest competitor, and because it's in a different state, even though it's France and Germany are closer than me and Walt Disney World, even though we're both in the US. You've got this whole business competition thing happening where it's kind of like you're putting Disneyland Paris at a disadvantage by not allowing them the same abilities that their competitors have just because they're a few hundred miles away. It's just interesting to see
Sorry, Jill. I didn't mean to step on you. At the same time, I think that the Europa Park opening date is going to have to be pushed back also because the cases in Germany have tripled in the last couple of weeks. And so they might have jumped the gun on announcing a date, and that could end up hurting them down the road where Disney's restraint may end up paying off because it makes it look like they're more cautious and more taking much better care of their clientele. Who knows? It's just hard to tell.
Yeah,
it's interesting that you said the whole idea of once things have started to reopen, and in Germany it's starting to see a spike in cases, and here in the US we're starting to see some spikes in places that had started reopening kind of early. And it made me think about the whole idea of you've put people in lockdown for weeks/months, and now you've let them out. If 2 or 3 weeks from now coronavirus cases spike, how are you going to get those people back in? It's kind of like they didn't want to be in the first place, and now you're going to put them back? And, are you going to reopen Disney World and then 2 weeks later, you're going to close it again? Like, it's going to be really interesting to see how this stuff plays out if cases do spike again. And are we going to go back into a second lockdown like a month or 2 or 3 from now?
Yeah.
Can we just look at the trends, too, is that Disney, in terms of their announcements so far, have pretty much been almost to the day, give or take a day or 2 weeks to give you notice to do something. The announcement for Shanghai was just about 2 weeks ahead of time. Today, they came out with Disney stores will open, and that is 2 weeks from today. Last week, we discussed, because it was brand new news, that Disney Springs was going to open with third-party restaurants, and that was 2 weeks almost to the day. So it seems as though Disney doesn't feel like they need to update the public. And you can even tell in the article, too, with our here in Florida with the reopening committee of Florida, there's Disney people on that committee, and they constantly repeat, we don't have any new news. There is, even just because we're taking June reservations doesn't mean we're not opening. I think that's because Disney doesn't really need to let us know until around that 2 week mark. I think that's an appropriate marker for Disney to let us know. People don't need more than 2 weeks. And that is also safe enough for them to see if things, hopefully most things won't change within 2 weeks or will stay on their projection of whatever Disney is looking at and whatever factors they are taking into account.
Yep. Whew. And one last piece of news for the week that is not related to the parks directly, but a little indirectly. I know we normally only cover parks news on here, but Shop Disney is so bad that I have to talk about it. So this article was written by a one Jason Diffendahl. Normally I don't bring up the author of these articles, but it's actually kind of important because if you're looking at the bottom, apparently Jason's changed his name to Chris. He was logged into the Shop Disney website and was trying to make some purchases.
But look right above it.
Like it was Jason, and then he changed it. Like it's so that this kind of a bug is something that just really bugs me. Pun not intended, I swear. As a software guy, seeing something like this where essentially someone can like accidentally steal someone else's user credentials is just absolutely terrifying. Because while I don't know offhand how much Shop Disney requires you to like confirm or reconfirm things like your credit card information and things like that when you go to check out, as we show in the picture right below this, you can just like go get their address book and see all the places that they've shipped to. You probably can see last 4 on credit cards and things like that. This is not exactly a good thing to be happening, even if they've got some more security in place. I haven't used the website personally. Has anybody here, like, do you have to reconfirm like the 3-digit code on the back of your card before you purchase anything? Or
yes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I've unfortunately done a lot of Disney Shop Disney shopping, and Jill was talking about this before about how when World of Disney opens, it'll be like our only kind of like touchstone to the Disney parks, and right now Shop Disney is that. And so like I just got this today.
Nice.
That I ordered for May the 4th, but May the 4th was a nightmare. I mean, May the 4th was horrible, and yet it's really the only place I can go and buy this stuff. So they kind of got me a little bit there. I probably would spend more money if they had a better system. There's a lot of things that I've wanted to get that have either sold out instantly or they look like they sold out, and then I hear people bought them later in the day. That's really frustrating. There was a ton of stuff that was exclusive for May the 4th, and it took me 3 or 4 hours. I think maybe even we might have talked about this on post show last week, but 3 or 4 hours for it to finally jump in. I mean, I'm stuck at my desk anyway. I'm doing work, and I have it on another screen, and it was like I was in that virtual queue for 3 to 4 hours before it finally popped up and said, "Oh, you can give us your money now." Yeah, no problem. Go ahead and like find something that's left here and take it. So they definitely we're not ready for what for the amount of shopping that people are doing now. And it's kind of embarrassing that a company of this size would not be able to think that far ahead, because it's not like this has just happened during quarantine. I mean, this happened with a ton of things over the years, like special lines that they had available, or the key situation where everybody wants the key and they log on. So I think that again, I'm not helping the situation by continuing to give them my money,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I think we're all very frustrated with the way that the process has worked, and we just desperately want them to do something better.
Yeah.
A, agree. B, I just want to say, remind me in the post show, and I will share with Wiggs a story about Jason's name and what my parents were actually going to name Jason, and instead named him Jason. I'll make that a little Wiggs exclusive
Nice.
story.
I want to hear that.
It was not Chris.
Can we just talk about, is anyone surprised that Shop Disney has issues?
No.
Has no one been on my Disney experience? Does anyone think Disney is technologically savvy unless it's their movies? Why does anyone trust Disney's tech department? Blows my mind. You can't get a fast pass 60 days out, but you think you can make a transaction in 60 seconds? Come on, people. By the way, this is fake money, so anyone who said I'm loaded clearly doesn't know my financials. I just found this on the desk. It's play money. But that's why I was laughing. But yeah, come on. I don't even know if I trust Etsy. I'd rather pay the extra $5 to the person who bought something on Shop Disney and risk their credit card number and give them the extra $5. Or eBay. Or
you know what, though? But in their defense, so places like Ticketmaster and Live Nation also have this problem with when people want something badly enough. I watched a poor guy in my office sit in front of a computer for probably 6 hours trying to get Taylor Swift tickets when those went on sale. And it was a virtual queue situation, the same thing. No judgment. It's Taylor Swift. It's fine, Pete. Calm down. But it was one of the,
I don't hate Taylor Swift.
Where when you want that thing so badly, whether it's a boarding pass or whether it's a key from Shop Disney, that there are still limits to the systems that are in place. And we can be super frustrated with Disney about this, but I don't think it's just a Disney problem. I just feel like they're so big, they should have figured out a way to handle this at this point.
Yes. And that's where this frustration comes from. Yeah. Well, that is going to do it for this week. As Jill kind of hinted at, we will be having a live post show after this for our Wigs, also known as the WDWNT Interglobe Society. Don't know why I always want to call them subscribers. It's because they can subscribe to Patreon. That's why. Head on over to patreon.com/WDWNT. For as little as $2 a month, you can help support this show and every other show that we put out there, along with getting access to our post shows, the post shows for News Tonight, a whole host of other benefits, including some new ones that I believe went up earlier today. We have, Jill, do you know a little bit more about that, I think? Muted?
I do. Forgive me because my internet's being a little squirrely right now.
Oh, that's what happened.
Yeah, so if you are a Wigs member at the 7 level or higher,
7?
you will now have access to the first iteration of our podcast archives, which we have moved to the my.wdwnt.com website, the same place where the prize wall is, where you spend your core bucks. You will now find a Wigs exclusive content tab, and on that tab, if you log in through Patreon, you will be able to access. So far, we have all of our Back to the Future episodes, and we have the Super Obscure Show up there available right now. Next up to add is the Christmas Podcast Parade episodes, which are one of my favorite things. And then we'll be adding more stuff in the Patreon post. You can comment if there is something specifically that you want to see us add. Let us know, and we can kind of prioritize based on what people are asking for. But that just went live today. So Wigs out there, go check it out and indulge in some of those old Back to the Futures if you're jonesing for Disney park attractions.
I love me some Super Obscure Show. It was one of my favorite things on WDWN Tunes when it first started. I think it was about half a decade ago at this point. But my good, it was a good show. If you haven't heard it, folks, I highly recommend checking it out. Also, go ahead.
I was going to say, can I just plug something? Because I'm super excited about tomorrow. Carol from the UK, the piano lady in the UK, is giving a party with Pete. So if anyone wants to come join us tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., Carol Stein from the United Kingdom will be on the show. So please come check it out.
Awesome. So we do have the whole WDWNT Live is still going strong. We've got Party with Pete tomorrow morning. We've got news tonight, of course, tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. On Friday morning, we've got WDWNT Play, which is a new series that I'm doing with Scott Smith, where we're going to sit down and play games and chat with chat and just hang out with folks. I believe this time we're playing the Disneyland Connect game that was made a while back, except we don't have a Connect, so we're using the PC controls. So it's going to be a bit of an adventure to do that. Friday night, we've got the Disney Digital Prom. Honestly, I don't know any details about it. Do you folks here know what that is at all? Because I'd love to hear a bit more.
I believe that is kind of... we did the Disney dance party a few weeks ago with Chris Reed from Cosmic Reed. So I believe this is going to basically be, a lot of kids didn't get to have their prom because of COVID. So we're basically kind of putting together some Disney music and having a little bit of a Disney online prom to help people celebrate.
Awesome.
So, slow dance with your mom or whatever you want to do. To some
I don't know. You might be quarantined with your significant other. That'd be some good luck.
I'm thinking like high school kids.
Yeah.
Slow dance with your dad. Slow dance with your cat. Just slow dance.
There you
with somebody.
go.
Slow dance with your wishables. Whatever.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
All right, folks.
Hey, can I say real quick,
no, go for it.
Deep in the Plus this week, I had the honor of having Mr. Pete Carney sit with me and talk about the 1993 Three Musketeers. So if y'all haven't, please check it out because it's Pete and he's awesome.
Oh, jeez.
It's also Rob and he's awesome. So Deep in the Plus, you can find that at youtube.com/WDWNT. Check our videos there. And you can also subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get notified each and every time that we go live or post a new video. Be sure to like this on there, too, if you like the show. And if you don't, leave us a comment. Tell me why, because I like fixing stuff so people like it. So that is going to do it for this week's main show. If you're watching live, stick around for the post-show. And otherwise, we will see you all next week.
See Marco!
Bye.
Oh, no.